Hi, I'm Matt Williams. Welcome to Glimpses. My guest today is an award-winning songwriter who has written hit songs for or with Kenny Chesney, Gary Allan, George Strait, Chris Stapleton, and Jamey Johnson, just to name a few. I have known this artist since he was a teenager, when his dad would take him to honky-tonks to play his guitar and sing. I'm so very excited to have Kendell Marvel on this program, so welcome.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to see you again. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. Now, I've got to start with your name.
Okay.
Kendell Marvel. That sounds like a stage name.
I guess I was born to do this then, huh?
I guess so.
That's my given name, yeah.
That's your given name. That's your family name, Marvel.
I think my parents got in, or my dad got in the elevator at the hospital, and they hadn't named me yet, and there was a Dr. Kendall. And that's the story I hear anyway.
Oh, so that's how you became Kendall.
Yep.
And Marvel. Is Marvel Irish? Is it English? Is it German?
You know I haven't researched it. I don't really know what it is.
All right. Well, I'm a mutt from southern Indiana.
I'm a mutt from southern Illinois.
Southern Illinois. And so I want to talk about that because this is the God's truth. When you were 10, 11, and 12 years old, your dad would take you to bars and you would play your guitar and sing. He'd get free beer. You'd get free beef jerky or deviled eggs.
Whatever they had behind the bar, yeah.
And so all those years as a child and a teenager, you more than got in your 10,000 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, probably before most people was old enough to be in there, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was an interesting time to be a kid.
Were you ever self-conscious, or did you just always give over to the music?
I mean, I was always self-conscious as a kid. You know, I'd rather been out playing with my friends, and my dad was like, "No, this is what you're going to do." You know, he saw something in me at a early age, 5, 6 years old, when I started playing guitar, and he decided then that was my calling, that was my fate.
That was your destiny.
Yeah.
Now, did your dad, was he a musician? Did he
Pseudo.
play guitar?
I mean, he still plays guitar a little bit, but he's, never done it for a living or anything
But
like
he
that.
recognized in you some kind of spark or some creativity, and he knew.
He
right?
did, yeah. As far as, the singing and guitar playing ability,
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an unusually deep voice as a kid.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, 10 years old, I sounded like Hank Williams Jr. or somebody. Like, who's this man-child over here?
Did you have the beard at 10?
No, I didn't. But I had a dandy mullet at that time.
Didn't everybody?
Yeah, no doubt.
I had one.
As you can see, the mullet is long since gone.
That's right. You made up for it.
That's right.
So in 1998, you moved from Illinois to Nashville, and the first song that you wrote, Right Where I Need to Be, was Gary Allan's first top 5 hit.
It was, yeah.
That was literally the first song you wrote down here?
It was the first song. Yeah, I'd been coming down here for a few years and going to the Bluebird Cafe, and any songwriter's night that I could go on a Monday night and stand in line to audition like everybody else.
Right.
And I'd met another songwriter, of several songwriters, but I wrote that with a guy named Casey Bethard, and he had been here a while, and he just happened to be my first co-write, and that was what we wrote the day after I moved here, yeah.
Well, see, I want to talk about that because I was shocked. Is it true you've written over 60 songs with Chris
It is,
Stapleton?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you've collaborated with so many artists.
Yes.
How does that work? How does the collaboration work? I know as a writer in TV, we're constantly collaborating, but
Sure.
with music, how does that work?
Oh, well, nowadays, being around a while and having some success, then they usually call you like, hey, they want to write a song with you, these new artists. But back then, me and all these artists was coming up together. Me and Jamey and Luke Bryan and Stapleton a few years later, we all just came through the ranks together. We were just songwriting buddies. We'd drink beer and write songs. And
Well, is it lyrics and then the other writes the music, or you just go back and forth?
Back and forth. It's just sometimes you got a melody, sometimes you got a title, sometimes you got a verse or a chorus, and sometimes you sit there and your co-writer writes the song, and you're just lucky to be there.
So in television, you collaborate all the time.
Mhm.
And I made a mistake when I first started running shows where I would hire writers who thought like me and wrote like me.
Mhm.
and I realized I don't need a bunch of me's in the room.
Right. You got that covered
I
already.
got that covered.
Yeah.
I need somebody who thinks differently or approaches the story or the character from a different angle, because somewhere in that opposing point of view is that perfect creative tension. Do you find that when you're songwriting? Do you need somebody to give you feedback and push you?
Absolutely. You know, and I'm always trying to write with people who are better than me. You know, that's a constant.
Amen to that.
You know, a constant struggle with songwriting. You know, you just if you write with the same people all the time, you know, you kind of get stale.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I find that all the time. You know that different people, you know, is the best. There's several guys of mine that I write with that come from different backgrounds and different way of thinking. You know, just a different way of life.
Right.
And you throw them into a room with a guy like me, and usually come up with something pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued because I'm not a musician. I don't play an instrument. I don't sing. I won't subject anyone to that. But what is your process? And I know it's ineffable. It kind of comes in different ways. But do you begin with a melody, a hook line, a title, a mood, an emotion? How do you birth a song?
It's all different things. I mean, sometimes it's just a melody. You know, I'll play something on the guitar, or like I said, I'll be walking the dog and come up with something and just speaking in my iPhone. Sometimes I'll be driving to town and write I've written a whole song and stopped at the house in town and grabbed the guitar and put it down, you know.
Really?
Yes. I mean, just different things, you know.
It bubbles up that way.
It could be just a character of a song, or, you know, a scene, just a small scene, or like I said, just a title, you know.
So you don't have a ritual or anything like that? I think
songwriting is maybe different than you're obviously different than your world.
Right.
But yeah, it's very fly by night. You know, it's just like you never know where something's going to come from.
Do you feel a song gestating and swirling around, and even before you know, this is what happens when I write. I'll feel this little nudge somewhere way back, and I'm going, I don't know what this is, but something's trying to get out. And then all of a sudden, in the shower, in driving, on the porch, having a glass of wine, you go, oh my God, that's what that is.
It happens all the time to me. Yeah, and it's not really a feeling. It's just, you know, as a writer, as a creator, your antennas are always up for, you know, a sign of some kind. You know, you hear somebody say something like, oh, that sounded cool. Yeah. And when two songwriters are talking on the phone or something, or having a conversation, somebody will say something. We'll be in a crowd of people, and somebody will say something, and we'll just look at each other like,
that's it.
We're going to write that.
So the thing I love about country music is the storytelling, right? I mean, what's the phrase? 3 chords and the truth,
right?
Is so many of your songs, you take us on this emotional journey. And are you conscious of that? Are you conscious of the storytelling element, or do you just allow the song to flow out and then you shape it? I mean,
I'm a big fan of the storytelling component of it. You know, I've kind of been a fan of those kinds of writers, you know, the Willie Nelsons of the world, who it's not just trying to get 2.5 minutes of bliss. You know what I mean? It's got to go somewhere. And it's a 3-minute movie, you know?
Yeah. I love that.
I want a beginning, I want to end, and I want a middle, you know?
And it's interesting you use the word movie, because you paint with words.
Sure.
You really paint with words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a good song, you feel as if you're in that world. You're smelling the smoke. You feel the texture of the world that you're creating with the song.
Yeah. I want people to see it. You know, I see songs in my mind. Like, you know, like when I'm listening to it, like I can picture that character they're talking about. I develop what I think they look like in that, you know.
So when you're doing that, when you write a song, do you ever get emotional? Do you make yourself laugh or cry?
Oh, many times, yeah.
Okay, so you do that.
Many times, yeah.
Good. I'm not insane.
No, we sat here on this porch when the first song that I wrote when I moved out here was with a duo called Brothers Osborne, a song called Younger Me, and it was very personal to all three of us for different reasons, and it won a Grammy. They won their first Grammy with a song we wrote on this porch, and yeah, it was like several times people had to get them walk away, like
because of the emotion.
Yeah, I need a break. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be writing and I'll find myself crying or laughing. And I thought, I'm so glad there's not a camera.
Right.
Because people would think I'm insane.
Sure.
But that's great because you really are channeling the emotion as well as the words and the melody.
Sure. I mean, we want to make you cry, make you laugh, or stop at a Stuckey's and start a fight or something. You know, it's just got to make you feel something.
That is the perfect segue because I've been listening to a lot of your songs.
Oh, nice.
They are so good, Kendall.
Well, thank you.
They are so good. And I wanted, when you said start a fight, I go, don't tell me how to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, did you deliberately write that as in your face a challenge? Because it feels like bring it on.
Absolutely. Growing older, as we all are, it's like I'm not the young guy anymore. I was the young guy in town here for a long time, and now I'm looked at as the old dude. It's the guy just still hanging on, and it's like, when's that guy gonna go away? So it's like, it's one of those songs. Go to hell. You ain't gonna tell me. I'll drink you under the table. I love that. Like, 'cause I wrote that with Stapleton, and I love the line, "I've spilled more on a barroom floor than you've ever had."
No, it's in your face. Yeah, the go to hell attitude is very much in that song.
Absolutely.
I loved it. I want to talk about, you've got 3 solo albums.
Mm-hmm.
Come On Sunshine, Low Down and Lonesome, Solid Gold Sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that, was that a leap for you? Did it scare you? Did you just plunge right into going solo with your own albums?
It was a strange time in country music. They called it bro country, and it was very frat boyish and immature lyrics. And to be successful, our job is to get songs on the radio. Like, your job was to write hit TV shows,
right? And
just the kind of songs I would have to write to make that happen, I just couldn't do it. I've had enough success that I don't really necessarily have to do that at the moment. I can still write with my core group of writers who I respect their talents. And I've always wanted to make a record anyway. I stayed home and raised my kids, and they were growing out of the house, and I decided to make a record at 40, almost 47 years old. And so now I keep a foot in that world and a foot in the other world,
Well, I want to talk about either way.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Stapleton recorded that song.
He did, yeah.
And you wrote it
Mm-hmm.
with him?
With him and Tim James, yeah.
That may be one of the saddest songs since George Jones sang He Stopped Loving Her Today.
It is a heartbreaker.
The first time I heard it, I got tears in my eyes, and I went, oh my God, this is loaded with such pain.
Yeah.
And such a melancholy.
Yeah. Those songs are hard to get recorded because, people don't want to sing about real life stuff. That's real life, Tim and I were talking before Chris got there. Chris was running late, as he always is, for a songwriting appointment. This was way before he was even famous, He'd always roll in 15, 20 minutes late. And I had that little melody going, and Tim was talking about either a family member or a friend or something who was, it was kind of their story. And we knocked that thing out in about 30 minutes. And Ann Womack, she recorded it 3 days after we wrote it.
Yeah.
She was the first one to record it. And I love artists like her who are willing to step out there and sing a song like that. Because most people don't want to for some crazy reason. I don't know. And when they put that song out as a single, Chris was coming off of Traveler, which was the biggest record of the decade.
Right.
And they had an album release party, and he came down the stairs and walked straight to me, and he was like, we just decided either way is the first single off this new record. I was like, you're coming off the biggest record of the year, and you're going to release a song with just you and a guitar. It was a pretty ballsy move on his part. And it wasn't a huge hit. I think it went to like 17. But, man, every songwriter, the reason people still call me today, I think, is because of that song. They're like, we want to write one of those.
But you said just an acoustic guitar, the simplicity of it is what makes it so powerful.
I agree.
It's just the guitar and the voice and the emotion, and it's heartbreaking.
I see people cry on it every time I see it played.
I want to talk about Low Down and Lonesome.
Mm-hmm.
And when I listen to that, I feel this thread of the blues, like a little delta sneaking in there.
Sure.
What are your influences? Do you just draw from all music, or is there a particular genre that speaks to you? Or
not really. I mean, I'm a fan of good music. I don't care if it's jazz, if it's rock, if it's country, if it's blues, whatever. If it's good, I like it, and I like to incorporate. I like to write with people from other genres, and I've had some of my favorite songs that I've done have written with people who don't know anything about country music.
Okay.
And so I draw off all kinds, growing up, that's why Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, those guys were so popular. They appealed to the rock and roll people. There's some angst in their songs and the rebelness of, the rebelliousness of it, it's like drew the rock and roll crowd. So that's what I kind of, when I make records, I want to make you feel like that,
Perfect segue, because Hard Time with the Truth.
Mhm.
That is about as hard driving and
It is.
as you get. And I noticed that in that song, there's God, the devil, and in other songs, there's heaven and hell.
Mhm.
Are you consciously drawing on from these biblical references, or is that just part of your background?
That's just part of my makeup, I think, coming from where we come from, church and faith and religion of some kind was, beat into our brains and
Yeah.
our souls, and so that's, and that's country for you. That's country music, that faith is a big aspect of this world.
So with faith, and I'm separating organized religion from spiritual.
Mhm.
Is there a spiritual component when you're creating? Do you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you could do it without a spiritual component. Yeah, that's where all the good stuff comes from, I think, and whatever that spirit is, I'm not a super religious guy as far as organized religion, but I do think there's something bigger out there than us. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's where all that comes from,
I agree 100%. And
Yeah.
whatever label we slap on
Sure.
that bigger than us thing,
Yeah,
God or goddess or
sure.
whatever you want to call it,
Exactly.
there is that thing. I really do believe that all artists co-create with that muse or that spirit.
We always just say, I just held the pen.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I just held the pen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the good ones, that's how it happens. Yeah.
That's amazing, because I've said this in other podcasts where when you're in that flow, when you're on your back porch writing a
Mhm.
song that wins a Grammy or whatever, and you go back to it the next day or something, you go, I have no idea where that came from.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Or even what sometimes you're like, I'm not even sure what that means.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like I have to look it up. It's like, oh yeah, make sure I'm not an idiot and that's wrong. That's not even what that means in that song, but yeah, it is. So it's like, how'd that happen?
I had a friend who was an abstract expressionist painter years ago in New York, and he said every painter, every artist needs someone looking over their shoulder to tell them when to stop painting.
Yeah.
Do you need someone to tell you when to stop fiddling with the song, or do you know?
I think I know now, or I feel like I should if I don't, but there was a time that I didn't, it was like, yeah, you'd beat a song to death, and that's what Chris was always good about that. Even as a young man, a young writer, I was way more experienced in that world when he moved here, but he always knew how to keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. And that's art itself, and keeping it very simple where people can understand what you're saying, but it says nothing, but it says everything.
To be simple is to be free.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, to be simple. And I think that's the hardest thing I know writers who write prose or write plays is how can you take this huge idea and make it as simple as possible, because the simpler it is, the more powerful it is.
Sure.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, like you said in your book, about a show about, makes me think of middle America, people sitting around their tables. And,
Right.
The concept was so simple, and why nobody before you come up with all that. I guarantee they look back and like, why in the hell did I not?
Yeah.
Because we all know it.
Well, I started with, we both grew up very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Working class, Southern Illinois, Southern Indiana. And I always start with truth.
Mhm.
What's truthful? And once you find what's truthful, then you can exaggerate it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you exaggerate, that illuminates.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure that's like a song, but
Mhm.
it's like when you look at a television series, Home Improvement, for example. Men and women should not live together ever,
Mm-hmm.
but they do under the same roof.
Right.
And every episode was, how does the masculine and the feminine live together
Mhm.
under this roof?
Mm-hmm.
That's so simple, but it generated 200 plus episodes.
Right.
So with a song, once you land on that truth, well, I guess it's a weird question, because do you begin with the truth, or do you write your way to the truth? Because it could be both, right?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that's in it. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that song "Hard Time with the Truth" you was talking about, switching gears and going back to that, talking about different genres. I made that record and wrote that record with Dan Auerbach. Dan's in a little rock band called the Black Keys.
Yeah.
So that was him and I and one of my favorite country singers, John Anderson, wrote that song.
Okay.
And it was it was a great day.
That's what. So a great date. It took you a day to write that, or a few
We
hours?
wrote that whole record in 4 days. We wrote 17 songs in 4 days. Him and I, we'd do a 10 o'clock in the morning and a 2 o'clock with just different writers and just write songs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so fun. It was
So you must get into a rhythm or something.
yeah, you do, especially at record mode like that. When it's like we got the band booked. We're cutting a record Friday or whatever, and this is Monday. It's like it's time to. Yeah, I'm sure you've had those crunch times. Like, we got to have this episode done.
There's nothing like a deadline.
Yeah,
I go. You just triggered all these memories from TV where it's Tuesday night at 2 o'clock in the morning and we don't have a second act.
Right.
And we're shooting it on Friday.
Mhm.
So we got to fix that because
No doubt.
tomorrow they're going to add the cameras, or the run through and the cameras, because Friday we're going to have 300 people watching this. That motivates you.
I bet.
Fear is a good motivator.
Well, that's a little bit more pressure than what I'm talking about for sure. But yeah, it's the same, same line of thinking anyway.
Right. Do you compose? When you compose, is it always on the guitar?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is with me. Sometimes a co-writer will play piano or something, or a mandolin, or I have different sounding stuff. Though I have a resonator that sounds like a dobro, or some of them sound like a banjo. Just sometimes just to write something different, to take you different headspace.
I noticed I've been watching a lot of videos of you singing your songs,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed your guitar is all you don't have a hole in it like Willie's.
It does now.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, but it's just starting to grow.
Because I was watching your guitar and I go, man, he's racing Willie because he's
Mhm.
wearing the guitar out.
Yeah, I beat the hell out of that thing for sure.
That's great.
A lot of miles on it.
Now, speaking a lot of miles, I didn't realize how much you travel. I mean, you play a lot of gigs.
I do. Yeah. This year, not as many, though I say that, and I'm home about 2 days a week in June. So it may turn into a busier than what I suspect. But yeah, and I'm kind of I'm kind of picky since I keep one foot in the songwriter world, and that's that's really I mean I make my living writing songs,
Right.
and I go out and play my stuff and and do my own thing on the road. So it's kind of I got to keep the balance right. But when you're getting festival offers and things, you have to go do it. But this year I'm going to do a lot more small venue, acoustic rooms, theaters, real small listening crowds, more so than
The big arenas.
the honky tonks, and obviously, if we get an opportunity to go out on a big arena tour, we will do it. But
Right.
that those days don't come along for a 54-year-old dude all the time, unless you have some famous friends who are kind enough to take you every now and then.
You were talking about playing intimate venues.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I saw you was at Joe's Pub, you and a bunch of songwriters.
Yeah.
Jamey Johnson was one of them,
Uh-huh.
and several others.
Bob DePiro and Buddy Cannon.
And you were at Joe's Pub in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the most enjoyable evenings ever because it was so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit up there with your guitar and just share songs and lyrics.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was wonderful because it's not a big, loud performance for 1,000 people. I felt like you were sharing a part of your soul with the audience that night.
That's what I love about those kind of shows and those kind of venues. I do songs at those shows that I don't do with my band. You know what I mean? When you got your band there,
Right.
we don't do 2 or 3 ballads a night. We're rocking. We're a rock and roll band that sings country songs, a little 4-piece rock band.
Right.
So it's fun to go drag out some of those songs that you forget about, that you love, that just you don't necessarily honky tonk crowd don't necessarily want to hear them.
Right. So explain to me, because you just said rock and roll and country, explain to me, there's a fine line now between those two.
Mhm.
It feels like country has moved, old country,
Mm-hmm.
the Grand Ole Opry, Minnie Pearl, Ernest Tubbs, that to now. Do you have a clear parameter or indicator what's rock and roll and what's country, or do they blend for you?
I think they kind of blend, rock and roll. I don't even know if they're, outside of Foo Fighters and a couple other bands. I don't know that there is any rock bands anymore. Like when we was growing up, there were
Right.
so many Led Zeppelins and AC/DCs, like true rock and roll bands.
Right.
You know, and before that, you know, Beatles and stuff like that. I don't think there's that many of those around anymore. So when I say rock, that's the kind of rock I'm talking 70s, 80s rock.
70s, 80s.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a blurred line, you know, which is a good thing. You know,
Okay.
I think if you can keep the lyrics of country songs, of country music, and bring in the wildness of a rock song, then you've got something for a live performance anyway.
Well, let me ask you this, because you write with a lot of different people. How do you stay fresh? How do you keep from falling into traps? And the reason I say this, I spent so much time in Hollywood, especially doing half-hour sitcoms. And I discovered through the years that the longer people stayed in the business, the more they all started sounding alike.
Mm-hmm.
And I could almost know in the room what somebody was going to pitch, because this is the same joke they would have used on Friends or Frasier or whatever.
Sure.
And there becomes a sameness. How do you fight that? How do you?
I think you just have to take a break, you know, and every publisher that I've ever written for, they know that going in. It's like, I'm not the guy that's going to produce you 80 songs a year like I did when I was a young man. I'm way more selective now, and they know who to set me up with. And
you said something to me right before we started recording. You said, I've stopped writing songs to get them on the radio, and I've started writing the songs that mean something to you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's and sometimes those kind of songs find their way onto the radio. You know, look at songs like "The House That Built Me." You know, I mean, they don't come along very often. They're out there.
Right.
There are lots of them, but people are scared to cut those songs. But when they do cut them, they're huge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When they're vulnerable and put themselves out there, and do a song like that they're always big.
Isn't that interesting? You use the word vulnerable, and I've discovered as I get older, and I give less shits,
Right?
so to speak.
Same.
That the more vulnerable I become and the more accessible, the more people respond. Because when I was younger, I was always presenting Matt to the world.
Right.
And at this age, I want to know who you are.
Right.
I'm not concerned about me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I don't give a shit what people think anymore. You know, I'm to that point. I mean, obviously we want people to like us.
Of course.
But I think if you're your true self, and people, they may not agree with everything you say, but they respect it, and they're like, okay, you know, they'll like you more if you're authentic. And authenticity is lacking not just in music, but I think in the world in general, you know, with the social media world that we live in now. Yeah. It's just such a big bunch of horse shit that's just like,
we're selling.
And I've caught myself up in it. You know, my wife is like, get off, you know, quit arguing with people, or quit doing that or whatever. And I was like, you're right. It means nothing.
Well, that's why we have wives.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons. Yes.
To yank our leash and get us out of the street and back on the curb. Right?
How long you been married now? You said
37.
37. We'll be 33 this year.
33. So, okay.
Yeah, that's a feat in both of our businesses. I know many people who've been married 33 or 37 years, but it's been about 4 times. You know.
But the good thing is, we're both domesticated and house broke.
That's exactly right.
They did their job.
It took them a long time, but they did.
I want to ask you this. What is your greatest fear as an artist?
As an artist, I guess, you know, at this age is becoming irrelevant and not getting that call anymore, you know, of younger writers wanting to write with you and pick your brain and learn something from you. Because I'm still, you know, like I said, I try to write with people who are better than me all the time. You know, I got to write with Harlan Howard and Max D. Barnes and Hank Cochran's of the world, you know, guys who are gone. And that breed of songwriter, there's very few of them left. Dean Dillon's probably the last one. So, you know, I want to be that. I want to be that guy that they still call, you know, when they want to write something meaningful. So I guess my fear is not being that guy.
When you collaborate, do you find yourself tutoring or not? Do you because I as a teacher, I bring 40 years experience into the classroom, and I instantly go into teaching mode, and you've got a younger songwriter. Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself leaning into that, or do you have to stop yourself?
You know, I try not to. I just wrote with a new artist, a guy named Cameron Marlowe, who is, I think, going to be a big old star, great singer. And he came to me, and he wanted to tell his story, his life story, and he proceeded to tell me about it, and we wrote the fire out of it. And it's just a great song. So I don't consider that tutoring. He couldn't get that song out.
Yeah.
And he needed somebody to help steer him along to tell his story. And he came to me for it, and I'm forever thankful for it.
Well, that's great because you've had such success that the fact that you are giving back, just the way these old timers that you talked about helped you and taught you,
Sure.
whether you're doing it consciously or not, you're
Right.
they're
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, they're absorbing your knowledge.
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry going? The country?
Man, it is so weird, with the streaming. As we talked earlier, I asked how streaming affected your
Right.
world, but it has really affected ours. Songwriters, and so the artists who don't perform like I do, or songwriters who don't perform, I'm afraid there's going to come a time that it's not going to be good. And it's used to. You could get it. You had songs on radio and had hit songs, and you got a royalty for that, and you still do that. But people also bought records back then. So
Right.
I know a lot of people especially back in the 90s when everybody was selling tons of records, they could still make a living off royalties from sales.
Yeah.
Those days are gone. Nobody buys records anymore. They stream, and the streaming services, as good as they are for artists like myself, that's the only way for guys like me to get our music out there, because they ain't going to play old dudes like me on the radio. The songwriter got the shaft.
Yeah.
The songwriters are going to suffer for it. And if radio ever goes away, it'll be somebody told me that when I moved to town in the late 90s, there was 3,000 or 4,000 songwriters who actually made a living writing songs. And now I heard there's less than 200
Really?
that only write songs.
That's
They
it.
don't have to go wait tables or, pick up a second job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's affected a bunch.
It sounds like playwriting.
Yeah.
That you have a handful that make a great living, and
Mhm.
most of them are teaching or waiting tables while they write their plays.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah. And it's, that's just the way it is, I guess, and if you're meant to do it, it'll work out for you, I think.
Right.
If you can't handle a little adversity, you're probably at the wrong thing anyway.
I agree
in a
with
way,
it.
with that kind of stuff.
I say this to my students, and I tell people tenacity trumps talent.
Yeah.
You have to have a degree of talent,
Sure.
but if you're not tenacious, if you don't just hang in there and keep doing it, you're not
Right.
going to succeed.
I've never seen a good golfer who didn't play golf every day.
Exactly.
You know,
And it's like a musician and their scales,
Sure.
and a writer who writes.
Right.
You can't just occasionally write. You put your butt in the chair every
Right.
day and you write.
yeah. And you see these prodigies, these young 20-something-year-old musicians, and I'm sitting there thinking they never went out and done anything as a kid. They sat in that room and listened to records, and you can't get that good by not just devoting all your time to it.
And you were sitting in a bar,
I was, yeah.
At
I wasn't writing songs yet, but I
But
was
you were singing them.
I was singing them, yeah.
and in between eating beef jerky
Mm-hmm.
and pickled legs, you were
Yeah.
singing the songs.
Yeah, and hanging out at places like your brother's house anytime he had a party,
You came and played.
I was the entertainment.
You
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
What can you pull back a little and look at those years and say, what did you learn sitting in the bar at 10, 12 years old?
Oh, I learned a lot of what not to do.
Okay.
It was a wild experience, looking back, and probably pretty traumatic on a lot of levels. I've seen a lot of things that 10-year-old, 11-year-old kids should not see,
Right.
and around people doing things, saying things, and it was pretty wild, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did learn a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I learned, like I said, what not to do.
Yeah. But you stayed grounded.
I'm sure there's been times that I wasn't as grounded as what I'd like to have been, but I feel like I did and feel like I am, yeah.
Well, Glimpses the book is about finding little glimpses of God
Mhm.
in our daily lives.
Which I love. I've read it twice. I love the book, by the way.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, then, by God, I mean moments of grace or kindness,
Sure.
compassion,
Mhm.
right? Do you have glimpses in your life?
Every day. Yeah, every day. I mean, I think that's what, when we was talking about God and religions and thing, I think just kindness is the truest form of not religion, but faith.
Yeah.
Just being kind to people. And where I grew up and how I grew up, I was around nobody but people just like me. So until I, was in my 30s and got into the real world, I thought that was all there was, was those kind of people. And not necessarily look down on everybody else, but I just thought You know,
That was it.
This is it. We're dominant.
Yeah.
You know, people like me, we answer to nobody, and everybody else is a little bit below us.
Yeah.
You know, because that's all I knew. So,
And then you get out in the world and go, whoa.
there's a lot of cool people out here who's not like me.
Yeah.
You know, that's my glimpses. I try to look at everybody the same and treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
And the older I get, I'm getting better at it. But I think that's a work of time, you know, and practice and patience. And,
But, you know, I think as you get older, you at least I hope you get less judgmental.
Mhm.
And instead of seeing the facade, you know, the meat sheath that's on the outside, look
Right.
for the spark, that flame that's inside, that spirit. And
Yeah.
you realize we are all connected.
Absolutely.
We are all connected.
all bleed red, you know.
Exactly.
And especially, you know, both of us were talking a while ago. We got new grandbabies, first grandbabies. So
Yeah.
my daughter's daughter, Frances, was born in last October. So yeah, we got to educate them early and show them that there's different things in the world besides us.
And your granddaughter's what, 8 months? You
She's
said?
8 months, yeah.
8 months. So at 8 months, do you begin to see a personality?
Oh, she's full of personality. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, we was with her. My wife watches her a couple of days a week while mom and dad work, you know. So yeah, we spend a lot of time with her. We just had her to the beach for the last week, and she ate 4 or 5 pounds of sand and you know, all that kind of good stuff.
That's good roughage.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, lots of personality. And yours?
She's 14 months.
Yep.
And what I appreciate is she's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
She likes to laugh and she likes to make you laugh.
That's awesome.
And I went, all right.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
fantastic.
Have a sense of humor.
Yeah, that's important.
So is there anything you want to talk about or say? What's been on your mind lately that you'd like to share? Anything?
Man, you know, after reading your book, I mean, I read it a couple times, as I said, and it's just, I want to continue to work, but I don't want to. I want to work to live. I don't want to live to work.
There
you
you
know what
go.
I mean? That's kind of my thing. And you have had a really good balance of doing that. So I want to work less and just make it more meaningful when I work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Work smarter, not harder, and spend more time at home and do things that are important, because a career is, you know, as wonderful as it's been to me, it's not what I want to be remembered by. You know, I don't want to be remembered by just my career. I'd rather be remembered as just a better person and work on that. You know, that's from here on out, that's kind of my goal.
I think that's the perfect way to close.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, that's it for this podcast. I encourage you as you go about your day to take the time to look around and catch a glimpse. Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you.
My friends, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Glimpses. Speaking of, Glimpses is now available for purchase at your online retailer of choice. And the best part? Every penny earned will be going to charities who support children in need. You can get your copy in the link below. Until next time, have an amazing day.